Hi, my name's Nick Paris and I'm going to show you how to use data acquisition with the iSpeed range of cameras and our Control software. The first thing we need to do is ensure that you've got the National Instruments drivers installed on your computer. The instructions for this can be found in the user manual of each of your cameras that you may be using. Once they're installed, then we can start up the Control software and ensure that we're running it in multi-DAQ mode. This obviously requires the use of the blue USB license dongle that you can then ensure is plugged in and with the red light showing. The next step is to set up both the DAQ and the camera connections. The data acquisition unit you should have been supplied with has connections on it, wired connections, that allow the synchronization to come out of the data acquisition and to BNCs that are available for your use. Ensure these wires are in position. If you have no wires on your DAQ unit, then please contact tech support and we'll advise you how to connect the data acquisition wires. Once you've got that, we need to connect sync and trigger to the camera. And so we can go sync out of the data acquisition to sync in of the camera. We also then need to connect the trigger inputs to both the data acquisition and the camera. This can be connected to a hand trigger switch or an external TTL source. Now we have all the connections made, we can connect to the camera and now see our application. In this case it's a speaker, physical movement that we can see, and we're going to data acquisition the signals going to this speaker. I'm running it at a low frequency just for ease of operation, and I'm running at a frame rate of 1000 frames per second. I've set up the image so that it's focused and the aperture is set correctly, and so now I'm going to move to the data acquisition panel. We press enable data acquisition, and now we can go in and configure the channels that we require to use. Here we select the USB data acquisition unit that you have. In this case it's a 6341 with BNC connections, and today we're just going to use one channel. I've set up the samples per frame of 20 samples. So this means with an acquisition rate from the camera of 1000 frames per second, 20 samples per frame, therefore our acquisition rate for data is 20 kilohertz. Once this is all set up, we can see that AI0 is the input channel that we should be connecting our data to, and we can start a live preview and see the data is active and that we've connected it correctly. So we've set up the data acquisition. Now we press OK. We can now start data capture, and we can then record into that data acquisition unit. We can connect to the external sync. We can see 1 kilohertz coming from the data acquisition unit. We can see live data coming in on our graph, and now I can hit record. We pre-buffer till this goes green, and so here we can allow that to pre-buffer. And now I need to trigger the camera. This trigger must be an electronic signal that goes both into the camera and into the DAQ, not a software trigger, as this will not trigger the data acquisition unit. I'm going to trigger the camera in 3, 2, 1, trigger. And so now this trigger has gone through to both the camera and the data acquisition. So now we can see the video and the data graph, and I can press play and we can move through that signal and we can see the acquisition here. So we can step through and see the different data going on. And so here we can align data with the position here. You can see there's a slight phase lag in the amplifier, but we can see that going on here. And so this is how we do data acquisition. We can change the size of this graph by changing total samples to graph if we wish. But here we can actually save a short amount of video, so we can say minus 100 frames set, and we can say plus 100 frames set. And so now we're going to save the video and the data off to our hard drive location. So now I hit save. I can save it as DAQ, apps, we're going to save it as sample, and we're going to save it as just test1. And so now we hit save. That video is then saved off, as well as the data acquisition file, and so we can then go in and see that video. So now if we hit Explorer and we go in to see, we go sample, and so now we can see the video, we can see the data, and we can see the .exe file. This completes showing you how to use the data acquisition.